Well, we have I think a really good panel here. I wanted to, just before we even get into this, we put a lot of time in this behind the scenes with various phone calls, both as a group and individually, and came to really, I personally learned a lot just when going through this process. And I know there's some real panel of some real experts here that I think, hopefully you will benefit from this. But before we jump into this, I wanted to just, I'll go ahead and make a quick introduction of these folks. Well, actually, go ahead yourself. Just if you would, just do a quick, just keep it a sentence or two, just who you are, your title, and your organization.
Push that button. Green light.
There you go.
Green light would turn it on. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Kuznar. I'm the Apprenticeship and Training Representative with the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Apprenticeship, and working specifically out of the Dallas Field Office of Apprenticeship.
Good morning. I'm Phaedra Redifer, Executive Director of Workforce Solutions for North Central Texas. We are one of the 28 workforce boards throughout the state of Texas, and we have the 14 counties surrounding Dallas and Tarrant counties.
Hi, I am Connie King, and I am the Workforce Development Director at PMA.
Hi, I'm Lance Thurlkill. I'm the CEO of All Metals Fabricating. We are a sheet metal fabricator. We also do machining, powder coating, and electrical assembly right here in Allen.
Brendan Mesh, and I'm the interim provost here at the technical campus. We're, again, really excited about the ability to host this conference. And my background has really been workforce education for more than 25 years. I started as a faculty member here, and then prior to that, I was working in the industry and trying to do the same sort of things we're talking about here. How do we enhance the opportunities for the next generation and encourage people to join in and follow that same pathway? So I'm hoping that we can come up with some great ideas to solve the problems.
Yeah, before we get started, how many people here participated in the tour? Just show of hands on that. Excellent. I'm really glad to see that. If you're like me, I was really, really impressed and actually blown away with this campus. I think and if anyone hasn't, I'm sure you need to put it on the agenda to see it afterwards on that. Kind of the intro to this is the challenge of finding and retaining quality labor, especially in manufacturing. It's very well documented. But over this next hour of this panel, we want to hear from a variety of these experts here on workforce. And the goal of this is really to help provide you some useful strategies that you can take back to your team, help. We also want to keep this lively and entertaining, and I also said I promise no infomercials as we do this thing. So that was something we got on hopefully in agreement with everybody here. But I want to just kind of lighten this thing up and just within 30 seconds, just go around the room here just for an icebreaker. What was your first job, and is there anything you learned from that?
My first job was at 13. I had a paper route in the small town I lived in, and it was built on a hill. So I learned that 5:30 wake ups and 6:30 climbs up the hill would keep you in shape and prepare you for whatever was going to face you the rest of your day. So
excellent.
That was my experience.
My first job was at Cornucopia. It was an ice cream shop in Flower Mound, Texas, and it supported my love of ice cream habit.
All right.
That would have been my real first job, was in retail, which unfortunately supported my shopping habit. I think it was a really bad start to my life. But my first job out of university was with a nonprofit urban beautification organization. So we would go into the city and clean up vacant lots and plant in all kinds of gardens and so forth that were sponsored. So one day I would be on a company asking for money to sponsor the garden. The next day I'd be actually digging and putting all the plants in and working with the local city people.
That sounds too fun for a first job. I don't know.
Well, mine was less fun. So I think my first job was actually moving. So our company was previously located in Richardson. It was a very old plant, and we had we build parts for a living, and so we have a bunch in inventory and of extra overrun parts. And so I was responsible for moving our inventory here to the new Allen plant and setting up. We built all the shelves and inventoried all the parts into our ERP system. And what I learned from that is just how allergic to dust I was.
Awesome.
I had a couple jobs. So my first jobs were really mowing lawns, and I've always enjoyed mowing lawns from an earlier age before that point. But then the first official, W-2 job, I think, was Kmart. And at that point in time, they made everybody wear a tie. And I learned from that point on that there's an opportunity not to wear a tie, take advantage of it. But obviously, customer service skills working there, I think that was something that early on was instilled in me.
And that actually was mowing yards was my first job as well on that stuff. But we talked about hiring and retaining, and I'm sure everybody in this room is experiencing trouble. Some of the previous conversations I had with some of the folks here in the room were even didn't matter, wasn't here in just Allen, Texas, but in Connecticut, all over across the country, hiring and keeping good people. That's a big issue. And so Lance here, I was with the all metals fabrication here in Allen, Texas. In my conversation with him, I came out that your average tenure is 11 years, I believe, with your employees. And like, first of all, like, all right, what the heck are you doing? Like, that blew me away. Like, so they expound on that. That's kind of a deeper issue, but what are you doing right that, kind of walk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah, when you say 11, I'm like, oh man, because it's actually been going down because we've had a bunch of people, we've had several people retire with like 30, 40-year tenures. And then we've also grown, we've doubled in size over the last 8 years or so, maybe not quite doubled, about 40%. But so, and still having been able to maintain that 11-year tenure has been great. A lot of it was established by, so I'm a third generation owner. And so my dad and grandfather get most of the credit for that. And first of all, it's just, caring for people radically. You put people first, as leaders and owners. I think we, get in the mindset of customers are our first priority. And that certainly is true as well. But your primary customer is actually your employee. And your employee is the one that's able to fulfill your customers' needs. And so it starts with this just mindset of like putting the employees first, even before yourself, and serving them. And servant leadership is something that my grandfather and my dad did without knowing what it was. And I was able to put words to it and kind of make it transferable to our leadership team, our current leadership team, and our mid-level managers as well. But so that's kind of where it starts. And then, and really also in just our compensation package, which, and the way that we're set up, a lot of companies in the manufacturing space in particular will focus on, only allowing people 5 to 10 hours of overtime, and then they'll be hiring and laying off all the time as a result, because it's a very cyclical business. And so we have a different approach. We run very lean, and we let people work. We historically had let them work as much overtime as they'd wanted. Recently, we had it imposed on us by a customer, our number one customer, that we were only allowed to let them work 20 hours a week of overtime. And we thought that was actually just a good practice anyways, to help give people some more balance. And as we all know, productivity dies off after about 55 hours anyways. So letting people work as much overtime as they want. And it's really cool. Just like, we won't have to tell somebody, hey, this job needs to ship out Monday. They'll know it, come in on Saturday, get it done, and have it ready to ship on Monday. And then, but taking it a step further, we have a 15% 401k contribution annually. And my dad and grandfather have even done that in years where we've lost money as a company. And so that's one thing we say, it's not guaranteed, but we've been doing it for 48 years. And so that really makes it sticky. That 15%, I mean, that's significant. We have a welder who has over $1 million in his 401k. I jokingly tease him. I say, Jesse James, the only welder richer than you. And so I think he appreciates that. But he's been there for 46 years, and he works 60 hours a week. So, I mean, he's worked hard for it. But having that 15%, and you might say, wow, that's got to be a ton of money. But, really, if you want to create a sticky culture where people, stay, that's, a way to do it. And actually some of them will take loans out against it to meet needs that they have, which actually makes it stickier because they need to pay that loan off. I mean, that's we offer that to them as a benefit, but if they need it, they need the cash now, then they're able to access those funds for buying a house or an emergency situation. So those two are like the main things. And then also fully covered healthcare insurance, and then quarterly bonuses and a guaranteed Christmas bonus. Those are the kind of the core benefits that we offer that are really make it attractive to people.
There's some other things too. I spoke earlier with John with Department of Labor about this. Of course, he has an insight from visiting with companies all over this region, and has insight to a lot of folks. And there's those other things too that you mentioned that you thought companies were doing right, kind of a higher level that you could share.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we talk to companies about, particularly in the context of apprenticeship, developing apprenticeship programs, but really it's across the board, just in employment strategies, in talent retention strategies, across more broadly, is that the things that you do, it's not always about how much you're paying per hour. The wage competition, you don't have to be the highest in the market to pay wages if you're doing other things. A lot of what Lance was talking about, those are the kinds of things that we talk to employers about, and we hear this is what is making our organization successful. And it reaches over into creating the culture in an organization. So it's your culture matters to people. When I first got in the business world and was learning about what leadership and management is about, that I was told the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that really is true. And that's true with your leadership and within your organization. That's true from people outside your organization. You're going to look to recruit and bring into your organization as skilled talent or as basic talent that you're going to develop and skill up and make them a part of your organization. So it's those kinds of things. It is the buy-in that builds the loyalty. It's having good training programs where you're investing in the individual. You're asking them to invest back in the company because they're going to agree to stay for a certain period of time, beyond their initial training, so that the organization, the company is going to get a return on the investment that they're making in that training and that development. So those kinds of tactics and strategies are really what makes an organization successful, and the kind of things that we'll talk about here in a little more detail across the panel.
Yes, other things too is kind of tying in with that is how do you attract the right people?
Yeah, before we answer
go
that, I
ahead.
wanted to just piggyback on
Yeah.
something John said that reminded me. So yeah, we actually, like dollar per hour wise, are not the top paying shop. And I was just trying to count in my head. I think there's been about 5 in the last year and a half that have taken dollar per hour pay cuts to come work for us. And so in the most difficult hiring market in the history of manufacturing, we're getting people coming at a pay cut from $1 per hour. Granted, with the overtime and with the 401k, they're actually making more. So I want to be transparent in that. Their total compensation is more. So yeah, you might think, well, I can't afford to do 401k or whatever. Well, you find ways to do it. And really it's about educating people on the total compensation package that you're offering, and figuring out what's important to people. But that really does help make it stickier. And you can, just because you're paying this doesn't mean necessarily you're also paying the top dollar per hour of everybody in the Metroplex. It's a total compensation package. So.
Yeah, it's kind of, I'm even look at the show of hands in the room. How many folks here have trouble even just getting enough candidates, in the door to interview? I don't know, is that, yeah, okay, that seems to be I don't know if you had some advice, anybody here, on anything you can do as a business owner or an HR person or other resources to get more good people through the door, good applying. Like Phaedra, you can jump in there.
So on behalf of Workforce Solutions, as I mentioned earlier, we have 14 counties. We surround Dallas and Tarrant counties. We actually have 12 workforce centers in most all of our counties, and these workforce centers are really your one-stop shop. We have Veterans Commission staff, we have vocational rehabilitation staff there, we have business staff in those centers. And basically, people can walk in and they can receive help from resume writing to brushing up on interview skills, as well as if they qualify, income eligibility, they actually have access to funding to upskill or to gain the necessary skill set in order to step into a career that they're hoping to advance in. So we're really that one-stop shop for everybody. I think it's really important that our ecosystem of partners are there with us. So we have tentacles out in all of our counties, really in depth in our communities, trying to understand from the community-based organization perspective to the ISDs as well as to what the employer's needs are. We are able to connect with these individuals who are coming into our offices. Obviously, as a result of the pandemic, we were able to stand up virtual services. So while we may have seen a slight decline in the number of people who are coming into our workforce centers, we have seen an uptick of people who are accessing our services virtually. So we do continue to provide both, which is important. And it's really just trying to understand what are the employer's needs so that we can marry these individuals who are seeking career mobility to what their particular needs are.
Yeah.
And I think recruiting is a little bit like fishing, where you just don't want to have one pole in the water. You want to have a lot of different strategies. And, a lot of our folks that go directly to the high schools and they have, visits to their facilities where they invite high schools in. That's one of the mechanisms where you need to start early on to change that paradigm and make sure that you have people thinking about manufacturing early on in their careers. And, like Lance said, finding ways of showing the value and showing that, all right, long term, this is the potential for this career. That's the sort of storytelling that the industry needs to do. And everyone in this room plays a part in involving educational institutions and any other avenue in which you can spread the word.
And if I can piggyback on that just a little bit more, and we'll get more into the partnership piece of it. But in addition to what we do at the workforce centers, we also host job fairs, either in conjunction with the employers or for the employers. So we can do it actually in our workforce centers. We can come out to the employers and we can actually bring our mobile workforce unit, which is basically a workforce center on wheels. And so we can pretty much pre-qualify people with the basic information. And then once they pass through the bus, we can then pass them on to you all in your actual facility. So it's just really important that we connect with the employers to better understand what your needs are so that we can then help to connect these job seekers directly to that pathway that leads to them to employment. We also in our workforce centers are part of the Work in Texas. It's the database, if you will, on behalf of the entire state, where we really need to see all of the employers' jobs input into the Work in Texas system. That's what we all work from in order to connect job seekers to the ready jobs that are out there. So we do a host of things. And again, it's just really understanding what are the employer's needs because we do have a solution for that.
So there are things too. I think companies, just from my experience, have to be creative in this kind of situation. And there's a lot of pools of people available that just not tapping into. Like some of these sources of non-traditional labor might be high schools, nonviolent felons, second chance programs, disabilities, veterans, foster care, immigrants, refugees. Some of you could talk a little bit about that, about how, for example, I guess Phaedra, that might be you. If anyone else can jump in on how folks like that, what's available out there that people can use.
You bet. So just like you spoke about the individual audiences that you all are trying to tap into, we have a ready ecosystem of partners already in these spaces. So for example, around the state of Texas, there's a Red, White, and U hiring Red, White, and U specific for veterans, but we also open it up to the public. So we will work with the local employers and we're really trying to find those matches and basically trying to distill down the transferable skills. So what someone might have known in the military, it might not necessarily translate to the civilian labor workforce or what those transferable skills are, but our Veterans Commission staff and our workforce centers and through the hiring Red, White, and U, we'll be able to break that down and crosswalk those skills so that employers really understand that those who are transitioning from the military career to a civilian career, they actually do have those transferable skills. And it's up to us to really do the crosswalk so that we can hopefully get them readily into those positions that are available. One important event of the many that we do is we just hosted United We Work out in Parker County. So we brought together our employers and we were actually able to take young people, teenagers from the local independent school districts who have varying degrees of disabilities. And we hosted them in day-long opportunities to actually go into the employers' places of business to better be able to understand what an experience may be like working on the floor, behind the scenes, working at a reception desk, and being able to show them that there is a pathway forward regardless of what their disability is. So it's again understanding the specific job sets, the job skills that the employers need, because we can plug into the various audiences that David mentioned, and we can be that conduit to really connect and then get those job seekers into those career pathways with you.
And there's some other things too, kind of this process is when they get people in the door hiring, you also have to get them, I guess, next step in that would be onboarding. And Lance, maybe you can talk a bit about what you do to get, once somebody's hired, how do you get them on board, get them up
Yeah,
to
let,
speed?
let me answer the previous one. I wanted to add just a few
Oh.
little ideas too, and I'll answer that as well. So one thing we just did here recently was a referral program, and we're given, it's $300, $400 for referrals, or if we hire somebody that you referred. And so that, I think we got a few people from that. And so we always thought, well, people were already always trying to get their, family members or friends in the shop. So we didn't think that a, referral would, paying them to do that would necessarily result in, since they were already doing it, but it actually did. It helped pick that up some more. So that's something that's an easy win. I'm looking forward to learning and doing more with the Workforce Commission. One thing we do is we do internships for engineers in the summer. So, high school or college students coming back that are engineering students, they can get experience, shop floor experience. And, I'm only paying them, $15 an hour, something like that, $12 an hour, depends on what their experience level is. And they love it and it helps them and they need it actually. And then also, from my perspective, is these people are then going to go be engineers somewhere else, and who are they going to call when they need manufacturing? Us. Or if there's one that I like enough, I'm just going to pick him off and hire him myself. And so that's one strategy that's worked well. Finding local high schools, giving robotics teams tours. Some of them have been wanting to participate in our internship program as well. We use Indeed in a staffing company, but I totally agree with Brendan. It's you got to have a lot of lines in the water, but typically the ones that are going to work out best are personal references, because that person is putting their name on the line for them. So, anyways, just wanted to give you guys some quick bullet points, some things that we're doing that's working. It's challenging, and Indeed's tough too, because there's like we were trying to hire a laser operator. And we opened it up and we put, you had to click a box that says, yes, you have experience running a CNC laser. And we had like 50 applicants and I didn't see laser experience on one single one of them. So it's kind of like, I don't know how good that is, but anyways, so then about the onboarding, you want to restate the question?
Yeah, because once you get, that's showing ways to get good people in through the door. But once you get them in the door, how do you, now what? How do you get these people to know where the machine is and how to do their jobs? What's that next step of onboarding?
Yeah, I think even
you mentioned culture too.
Yeah,
part of that.
it's through the hiring process. I'll talk a little bit about our hiring process, which I think is unique for the manufacturing space. So every person that applies takes a personality survey that we use. It's called Culture Index, cultureindex.com. And it gives it breaks a personality down on 6 different traits. And we've identified a few that are very important for our people. One being detail orientation, given that we're a precision job shop. And so, and it'll actually allow you to build different profiles for different roles in your entity. So for example, our customer service people have a profile, our department leads have a profile. And so when these people apply, it helps you to understand them and know them. What I always tell them is the better I know you, the better I understand you, the better I can lead you, and the better I can communicate with you. The old golden rule is not right. People don't want to be treated how you want to be treated. They want to be treated how they want to be treated. And so they want to be communicated how they want to be communicated to. So understanding people's personality and if it's a match with the organization, and then interviewing them based on our core values. And so making sure they align in the core values. You know, it's like, I think a lot of times in the manufacturing space, especially, it's like, or when you're desperate, it's, hey, you got a pulse, you want to work here? All right, come on in. And like, and it's going to frustrate your people on the floor. Trust me, I've been dealing with that. We did as well. And is we were trying to use a temp service just to handle like breaking out parts. And even that, our people were like, no, these people aren't good enough. You know, it's just when you call people to a certain level of excellence and expectation, and you bring other people in that aren't doing that, even if it is just a temp position, it just brings down the whole morale. So really vetting those people and making sure that they align with your core values, especially this younger generation. They want to understand who you are and why you do what you do. And so I want them selling themselves to me and me selling myself to them. And that's part of the whole interview process.
Wanted to go real quickly too. There's one thing we uncovered too is apprenticeships. It's kind of an old term that seems to be making a comeback. And John here with the Department of Labor has been doing this again across this district or several counties for a long time. And I know you've got some real work. You've done a lot of real in-depth work with Raytheon. And is Raytheon here? I thought there's Raytheon way in the back. Well, there. And that, so yeah, my understanding is too that it's been so successful here locally that Raytheon's going to implement this in an operation in Mississippi as well. But why don't you tell us a little bit about an apprenticeship? What is it, and why? You know, what's the advantage to them? Maybe what's the difference of a DOL structured, you know, certified apprenticeship versus just doing it on your own?
Sure, thank you. And so, registered apprenticeship, the Department of Labor definition is a earn while you learn model. It's where you bring in individuals and you provide them with on-the-job learning opportunity, on-the-job training, and you're supplementing that with related technical instruction that supports the conceptual, you know, or technical aspects of the job that they're expected to perform. And it progresses and takes an individual from 0 to 100, you know, in qualification level. So it's a model, it's a process, and that's what registered apprenticeship is we have specific standards and requirements on how we build those programs in partnership with employers and with training providers like Collin College. And in Raytheon's example in particular, they had a couple of specific positions: assembler, precision assembler, and electronics technician that they wanted to fill, and they were having a hard time keeping filled. So they said, look, we need to we'll figure out the recruitment, right? We'll go find all the talent pools out there for the folks that we're looking for. But once we identify them, that they're going to be a fit for the job and a fit for our organization. And to Lance's point, to our organizational culture, that we need to have a strategy on how we're going to take them through that process. And that takes a lot of time and investment by the on behalf of the company. But every DOL surveys and studies have shown for every dollar that an employer invests into an apprenticeship program, they'll get $1.47 return on that investment. So that's 47% return. I don't know about your 401ks, but mine's not making 47% this last couple of years. So that's what apprenticeship does. It's a packaging model and a strategy more than anything. We don't reinvent the wheel. We work with you. We partner with employers. We partner with the training providers, the Collin College. We partner with the Workforce Solutions North Central Texas, and we build a complete plan, a complete process to implement that strategy and put an apprenticeship program in place. And along the way, the other key to DOL definition of registered apprenticeship is there has to be some incremental wage increase or a reward for progress for the individual. So they start at a minimum entry level, but at some point during the process, you want to reward them for the progress they've made and continue to incentivize them to continue to make the progress. And we have apprenticeships in different occupations that could be a year long and they go to 4 years long. So that's kind of the model of apprenticeship in a nutshell. Raytheon did just on the 14th of November, we created a program in partnership with Collin College, who's sponsoring the overall administrator of the program. And they did the same thing that very next day on November 15th, they signed apprenticeship standards and created a program in Mississippi in their operations there. So it's a model that works. It's talent development. It's a talent development strategy. And it takes investment from both the employer and investment from the individual. But that individual recognizes this company is bringing me into the culture, bringing me into the organization, providing me the training at no cost, where in the case of Raytheon and the Collin College it's offering for credit courses in the instruction they're going to go through. So they're going to be qualified at the end of their 2 or 3 year apprenticeship program to then go on and finish their associate's degree. So it's all of a win-win, and it's about a give and a take. The employer invests in the individual is investing in the employer. And that's what builds the loyalty and the kind of culture that Lance was talking about. Because those people know this company cares about me, about my development, about my growth. And I can see, to his point, when you talk about the younger generation now, what they have to know the why. They can see, hey, there's a path. I know why I'm being asked to do these things today and tomorrow and next week, because I can see the path over the next 2, 3, 5 years. And I see the opportunity that I might have to grow in this company, and have a long-term career with this same organization. So those are all the things about the registered apprenticeship.
Is there anybody here that's using that? I know Raytheon. Is anybody, a show of hands? Who else? Which company are you with? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Is that structure? Is it with the Department of Labor? Okay, great. What's your experience with that? I'm putting you on the spot and him on the spot. Is it worth it? Yeah. Wow. This is not a paid infomercial, not a testimonial. So hear from this lady right here. Somebody else, I thought I saw something in my peripheral vision. Okay. Okay. So this isn't a big pain in the rear. I'm busy. I got a company to run. Is this going to take up my time and it's investment? Okay. You heard it from the source. All right.
David, if I can, we
Yeah,
work very, very closely with John and the Department of Labor to really break down all the bureaucratic paperwork that has to go into it. I think it's important to note that the employer has to have skin in the game. This is not this is a great idea and they get to walk away. It's an investment in your talent pipeline. And it is a sure, tried and true talent development opportunity for all of you. You can scale it too, which is great. In fact, we have Encore in the room, which is also embarking on an apprenticeship program. We're currently operating 32 apprenticeship programs throughout our 14-county region, and 10 of them are located right here in Collin County. And it's also important to note that it's not just for the trades. We've expanded the apprenticeship program opportunities to healthcare, to AMR Fleet. To name a couple that we have Bombardier, which has been a very successful apprenticeship program for us in our region. Tony Curry is actually the plant operations director down in Red Oak. We take him on the circuit, and he speaks volumes as to what the apprenticeship program has done for Bombardier specifically, as well as the expansion program that's coming soon as well. I think it's important to note that there is money that has to be committed from the employer. So again, in Red Oak or Bombardier's experience, they invest about $15,000 per employee in order to develop that talent pipeline. And as John had said, there's about 91% retention rate for those who actually go through the apprenticeship program. That is a significant percentage of being able to keep those individuals who you're training and providing the ready-made opportunity to step into this workplace culture and learn it from day one. So it is a little bit of hand-holding, but we are tied at the hip with the Department of Labor, Workforce Solutions, again, just understanding what your needs are. And as I mentioned before, it's all about collaboration. We bring in our educational partners, we bring in economic development corporations, we bring in everybody who's a stakeholder in supporting the employers within the counties that we represent. So I think it's important to note too that these individuals, they start earning a wage from day one. We know that life doesn't stop for somebody to put earning a wage to support their living habits on hold just to be able to train and step into that job. So it is earn while you learn, and it has significant benefits, not just to the employer, but to the employee and certainly the region.
John and Phaedra talked about some very tangible benefits for apprenticeships, but I think that one that's I've heard of from a lot of folks that are involved with it is the impact on the culture as mentors who work with the apprenticeships as mentees learn leadership skills. So you might have somebody who's, never thought about being a manager, and now they have this mentee that they're working with, and they're really, developing this relationship. And in many cases, they're learning something at an educational environment that the mentee's taking back, and they're having discussions, and it improves that potential for employees to become managers and rise up in that organization and make it even stronger.
And if I can just really quick, I was actually with some of my team members. We were at L3 Harris out in Greenville. We had a day-long tour of their facilities, and we learned from each of the individual units in terms of what the types of specialized skills that they're looking for. We also had the president from Paris Junior College there. So again, it's all about bringing the people in at the forefront, including workforce solutions, to better understand what are your needs, what are you looking for in terms of a skill set from the employees? And then how do we partner with the community colleges to be able to be part of that mix so we can help develop that pipeline? So Jeremy is here with L3 Harris. In fact, we now have Craig Driggers. He's going to be our workforce development board member. And again, it's really tapping into our board members as well who are representing these key industries in our region and trying to figure out how best we can support and bolster their talent pipeline.
Person I've kind of left out of this conversation over here is Connie. And we've been kind of talking about training, and I know she's got a lot of expertise in online training. And Connie is with the PMA, who's of course behind this whole event. So I know you've been waiting patiently through all of this. So
Well, I tried to get in on the onboarding discussion.
okay. Well,
and we
we'll let
jumped
you.
to apprenticeships.
Yeah,
but
we're sorry.
That's okay. Well, yeah, I mean, there's some great advantages to obviously being a member of PMA, and David spoke about a lot of those earlier today, but we also, help there's a non-membership also advantage to being associated with PMA. But I think one of the great things about what we offer is we had this discussion the other day with Lisa, is that we offer a variety of training from the people on the floor all the way up to the executive level, and that's support and training. So we do have an online system called Metalform EDU. There is information on your tables about this. And one of the great advantages to this is that it offers a lot of, from the door to the floor kind of training, getting people up to speed quickly and ready to work in specific industry of metal forming that is almost impossible to find anywhere else in some of the online training, right? We have a whole category, several categories specific to the industry. You can find a lot of online training. Yes, there's a lot of different things out there, but our curriculum is very specific to the industry in the metal forming side. And we also have additional information to support that. But we also have technical seminars. So you have incumbent workers, right? People on the floor right now who want to upskill and move on and learn more, right? Learning is a continual process. So there's technical seminars, there's webinars we offer for free and sometimes for paid. There's executive networking groups. There's our Management Development Academy. You mentioned people who are put in sort of a leadership position or didn't realize they were in a leadership position. And sometimes, right, you're like, oh, you're really good at this job. You are now a manager. And you have absolutely no idea what you're supposed to do, right? It is an acquired skill and you have to learn. And so our Management Development Academy will help those types of people come from from aligned to leadership, right? You used to be their peer, now you're their boss. And that's also a very difficult transition for a lot of people. So there are a lot of different things that you can do. And this is an investment, right? We talked about this, an investment in your people. There are assessments as well. You talked about a personality assessment. We have a an OCA assessment, which is a occupational knowledge assessment, right? So you can learn a little bit of what do they know about the industry, what do they know about where they're at in the industry, so you know what type of training they may need. But a big thing that I think was mentioned is the motivators, right? Personality, DISC assessments, cultural, whatever ones you use will tell you people's personality. Another test to add to that is your motivator, right? What motivates me? The culture comes into that. I want to know my peers. I want money. I want to feel a part of something. I want to give back. I want to know what you're about. Those are motivators. And getting to know your people, getting to be, like you said, how do I want to be talked to? How do I want to be communicated with? What is it about me? Those are all part of a lifelong training aspect that we can assist with and that many of the organizations here can assist with.
Now there's probably like a long laundry list of courses available. What are the absolute must-take courses that people need to know about? Back to
In the industry
or on your
of ours,
your tools.
depending on the type of positions, right? There are must take, I would say, learning pathways. We have some specific learning pathways set up. So we have die setter, we have metal spinning, we have press shop operator, we have brand new material coming out, press brake operator. We have some die protection that's going to be out early next year, as well as some advanced press operations. Those are like very technically based, specific to the industry. But I think some of the must take types of things that we add to that and can add through it, either through our seminars, events, or Metal Form EDU, are a lot of the foundational skills. And I use foundational in terms of like soft skills and communication skills and team building and how to just types of ways to interact with other people. I think personally, those are a lot of must takes that you add to the technical skills. So it's not just about doing your job effectively, but also working with your culture and your community and your peers effectively.
We're still on the topic of training. What else? I guess the Workforce Solutions as well as the college has probably got some insight into this as well. And Lance, maybe you too, if you have some other.
One thing I'd like to toss in there is we've talked a lot about apprenticeships. We've talked about internships. We all know what those are. One thing that we're really looking to expand in this upcoming year are externships. And I'm not sure if you are familiar with what those are, but this is where teachers in the summer will take a week out of their summer months and they will actually spend a week at that particular employer facility learning exactly what that skill set is, or to help them develop better targeted curriculum that they'll bring back to the high school students. And this is another ready-made opportunity to provide our younger audiences who are looking to start establishing or identifying their careers to better understand what it is that will be needed from them. But again, this takes employers spending the time to be able to coach and train, if you will, the teacher. And again, the teacher goes back and develops that curriculum. And then throughout the course of the school year, they're actually teaching these students the experiential skill set or experiences that they'll need to better understand moving forward. So we had, I think, just over 25. This year, we're actually applying to TWC to have more grant funding opportunity available to us, and we're trying to swell up to 100. But again, this is because it's a partnership between education, industry, and workforce solutions. Brendan?
Yeah, I think those are all great ideas to get students more engaged and be strategic about this process happening early. The educational piece of this equation, we're highly supportive of pathways that would help students achieve their goals, but ultimately, we're not able to stand up a program unless there's a commitment and a need for that program. So it's important for us to have the kind of relationships with industry so that we, number one, understand what is the end goal in mind. And I think that kind of speaks to some of the efforts with the apprenticeship approach, where we really kind of craft what this job and what this position is going to have to do, and then backwards engineer it into the curricular elements that we have in place or we need to build. But in terms of a certificate or an associate's degree, a lot of conversations can be had where we learn more about it and we build something, but ultimately we need to have the sense that it's going to be something used by industry. If that's not the case, if it's something where there's a smaller group, there's things that can be done with continuing education in our corporate college. So some of the incumbent training that Connie spoke about, there's other pathways. So in really, the closer the ties are between industry and education, the better we're going to be able to support workforce.
The question too, on the subject of training, this is a cost, but I realize there's a lot of programs available, here to pay for the training. And I'm sure this is true in other states, the few that are here from out of state. But why don't you, Pedro, if you would just comment briefly on the Skills Development Fund and some of the other monies that are available, and then how to approach that, how to get that funding.
Yeah, thank you. So we receive our money from the federal government, which gets passed down to the Texas Workforce Commission and then distributed out to the 28 workforce boards. So we have an allocation of that money that, of course, is infused into our region, the 14 counties that I spoke about. But there are a number of times when I'm throughout the county and I'm in the pictures because we're presenting checks with the Texas Workforce Commission with regards to the Skills Development Fund, the JET grants, where we actually help the high schools or community colleges secure the necessary funding to buy the appropriate equipment that employers are going to have in their places, but we want to train the students first before they get to those places of employment. Also, with the middle skills gap, we have a significant issue there where it's just beyond high school, but not necessarily required for a four-year college degree. And so we have funding that can help address the types of skills training that those individuals would need in order to step into a career or to advance and have career mobility within a particular employer. So we have access to a significant amount of funding through the Texas Workforce Commission. Again, it really goes back to what are your needs? We're always pulling labor market information. So we can take a look at our demographics. We can take a look at trending information. We look at the competitive salaries being offered. And most important, to Brendan's point, is what are those in-demand occupations? Because it doesn't do an educational institution any good to stand up any curriculum or programs if it's not ready to go into somebody stepping into that position at a local employer. It all has to be woven together because we all support one another in that longer term goal, which is to place people in long-term career pathways within our region.
You did want to,
Yeah, I just wanted to say we have participated in a grant and partnered with Collin College and been able to train our existing staff. And so I just wanted to attest to that it's a great program, and it's an investment of your time. And so it has to make sense, I mean, you want to be really teaching people. So a few that we did was like some blueprint reading for entry level people. We did some advancement on programming and SolidWorks, some training. So programmers were people that were just programming the machines, but then also getting SolidWorks training. So design and unfolding parts, some technical aspects of that. And then if you have enough technical classes and courses that you're offering, you can also do soft skills as well. So some leadership development, but you have to have a certain percentage with it mostly being technical. So I just wanted to attest to that. The program works great, and the money's there to be used. So.
And I think it's really important to note that the link to the trade school or the community college is critical because they actually serve as the fiduciary agent and administrative entity for the grant money that we're able to collaborate on and pull down from Texas Workforce Commission. So we always need to have the community college, and I would have to say that Collin College is an excellent partner. In fact, we talk a lot throughout our region as to what an exemplary role that you all play for us. We issue letters of support, and so far to date this year, we've actually supported about $39.5 million of potential grant funding that will go into developing the future workforce in our region. So we're hoping that all that pans out. In fact, I think it was a year ago, we were just at 5 million. So for us to swell this big, it shows that there's a desperate need out there. We are ready at the table, and this is all money that we infuse into the education system, which is all in direct alignment to develop the workforce pipeline.
Yeah, and I want to toot y'all's horn as well. That Collin College, they did the bulk of I said it was investment in your time. It is in your people's time. You volunteering their time. You're paying them while they're training. But yeah, in terms of the paperwork and the burden of administrative, like Collin College did all of that. I can't stand any of that stuff. So they made it super easy for us, and it was a great program, and we look forward to doing it again in the future.
And what's so easy about the community college aspect is that they're able to really stand up curriculum pretty quickly versus a four-year university. And not that they can't, but it usually takes quite a few years. And the community college or junior college aspect, they can stand it up pretty readily, which is then in direct response to the employer's needs.
We're going to kind of shift into a community college. They've done, obviously, they historically played a real fundamental role in preparing people for careers in manufacturing. I've been real impressed with Allen Economic Development through my work with the college. Fortunately, so many folks here have taken the tour of this facility, but this is only just one campus. This is a much, much bigger school. Brendan, what would be the things you would want, just if 30 seconds of what do people here need to know about?
Thought there wasn't
College?
any infomercials here.
Well,
I
this is
guess
your chance.
He's asking me to do
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So yeah, this is just one of our campus locations. So we have 10 other locations that we would consider either a center or a campus. And then we have offsite instructional sites at high schools, at businesses. So we have about 50 more of those. So pretty much any program that is supporting workforce, we have some element of it. Where we have obvious gaps, I think, are in manufacturing. I think that, we have some programs that lead towards careers in manufacturing, but we're, actively investigating. And this is where our process of developing curriculum is one where we just don't sit a couple of faculty members down and say, hey, what do you want to do? We get industry to come in and do an exploratory committee. We map out the curriculum. We look at the student learning outcomes. And then based upon that initial conversation, we'll come up with a curriculum that we send back to industry and ask, all right, are we getting it right? Is there something that we should do and tweak better? Are there any industry certifications? Are there things that you really see value in that we're missing? And then in theory, that launches and the conversation continues with additional advisory committees looking at the curriculum and ultimately looking at some of those graduates and saying, are they fitting the bill? So, just as Phaedra said, it's that relationship that makes it work so well. And, while we try to be as nimble as possible, that process of exploratory committees and going to curriculum advisory boards here at the college, it's going to take a little bit of time for that to go through. And we have our state folks that we need to have buy-in as well as our regional accreditor. So it's a process that works. It's a process that's nimble. But the earlier we talk about it and the more frequently we talk about what the needs are, the more accurate we are going to be to your particular needs.
How do people here get involved? Like if you're maybe this is probably people's first time here.
So if you're passionate about shaping an educational program and ultimately shaping the future of your industry, we would really want to talk to you. And my business cards are out on the table. So please, let me know if there's a way of helping. And, if we get enough folks that say we need to have a program that's focused on manufacturing, we're going to start talking about it and having those conversations to build something. I think that we have, an interest, but we also need that commitment that Phaedra was really speaking to. And, the important piece I think that we haven't touched on is that our conversations have to start early. If we have a program that, let's say they make $80,000 a year and it costs them $6,500 to go to school and it only takes 2 years, that's wonderful. But we still need to have people that are interested in doing that. And part of that is reshaping their perception of what that job's all about. And the paradigm shift has to start early in the minds of parents, high school educators, and ultimately the students. And there's some states around the country that I think they're doing innovative things. Arkansas has the Be Pro, Be Proud plan where they have a bus that they drive around to middle schools and high schools, and they really are talking up all the different trade possibilities for students. That's something that I'm personally involved in talking to the folks from Be Pro, Be Proud about trying to do something like that in Texas. But we need partnership. And we need folks that are willing to invite high schools to come to their campus. The program that Phaedra talked about where you can have a high school educator come in during the summer. And, by the way, they get CEU credits for that experience. So, it's something that checks off a box in addition to learning a new thing. That's how you change mindsets. And it might be somebody that they don't know a whole lot about manufacturing. They don't know a whole lot about metal forming, but they teach a class that leads into an engineering pathway. And maybe it's a math class. And now they know a little bit more and they can thread that into their coursework and have that kind of conversation about the possibilities. So, we all shape the future. We want to be really strategic about that.
Is there, I'm trying to think here, is there any way education industry can work better together? It'd be you and Brendan, and I guess Phaedra, if you had comments on that, just things we need to be doing.
As we talked from the very beginning, it's really about collaboration and talking about what are the needs and how do we close any of the gaps that create barriers for industry to talk to education and education to talk to industry. It's all linked together. I think one of the things Brendan hit on it really clearly is that it's how do we talk about these types of jobs that might not be the whistles and bells that their parents had or what have you. It's changing the vernacular and how we talk about these careers. I also think too, where our opportunities lie are really embedding some of our workforce solutions staff inside the high schools, and to even go so far back as the junior high schools, the middle schools. We know that guidance counselors do a great job. They also have a heavy burden just to deliver the basic administrative functionalities of high school administration, middle school administration. It would be great if we could figure out ways to identify some private funding to actually place career services staff inside of our schools so that we can start talking to them early on. I know our child was in 8th grade and she had to pick a career pathway. Thank goodness she still likes it. She's almost a junior, but that's really early. So we've got to back up when we're actually starting to hit the schools as well. We cannot wait any longer for when they are getting ready to graduate, say in January of their senior year or even their junior year. We need to start backing up our integration into the school system starting as early as middle school. And that's where the conversations really need to start. But we have great connections with the ISDs. And again, it's all about sitting down together and talking about where are we trying to go, but how are we going to do it together and leveraging everybody's resources to do that.
I think another thing is that you might have a high school student, a college student that's working for you, and you're excited because they're bringing some energy and enthusiasm. You play a motivational force, but you also have to worry about they should finish what they're doing in education, and be it a high school diploma or a college associate's degree or certificate. Allow them that opportunity to finish. And, we love those symbiotic relationships where we have folks that come in and they hire students after their first or second semester. And there's just things that we can't teach them here at the school, and vice versa. There's some things that we can do a little bit more efficiently. So being that partner once there's the employment opportunity, I think is key.
And I would also say, as we talked earlier, David had prompted us, what can you do? Make sure Workforce Solutions, your local workforce board, is at the table in all that you do. And I think it's important to note too that our employers are also out in the rural communities, and our goal is not to strip those rural communities and take that labor force and put it into the urban settings. We really want to shore up our our rural communities, our rural employers. So what are we doing from that community standpoint to shore up the rural connections and keep the people there? Most important.
This has been good. In the sake of time, we're now approaching the end. I didn't want to just open up for questions, but I figured probably best is you can talk to folks individually afterwards. I encourage if you have things you want to discuss, these folks will be available afterwards. Buttonhole them and ask them with your questions. Trying to sum up some of the main takeaways. There's a lot of good information. As I said, there's some tools that we've been exposed to over the course of this hour. I think it's true. We've kind of in the midst of a lot of change that's taking place. And with that change, it requires a lot of really being willing to adapt to these changes, not fighting it, but being adaptable to it. And it's driven a lot by, I'm hearing culture. I'm hearing it, even though there's workforce challenges, I'm hearing this from not only this panel, but also from my own experience, because I do see companies that are very successful in bringing in happy workforce. Even one example I've thought about was, here, how many people here, how hard is it to convince a teenager to go work in fast food these days? Look no further than Chick-fil-A. What are they doing right? They're obviously doing something right. I don't even know, but they're, always giving me a smile. I'm like, are you always that happy? It's like, So there's a real key in the culture. It's kind of, there was a term that Lance used, I think, caring radically, also being flexible, developing a sticky culture, but it was I'm hearing in these conversations, a lot of intention behind that. It didn't just happen magically. It's putting a lot of time and being intentional about that, developing that culture and using that as a key differentiator, treating your employees like, they're part of the team. They're essential to the business, treating them like they're the customers, because ultimately if they're happy and, they're going to be serving that customer well, going above and beyond and loyal. Things with compensation, that even the highest wage was not necessarily, the solution. You're finding ways about that and really demonstrating, I guess John mentioned that kind of a longer term perspective, that you're vested in their future, but it's a contract, they have to be willing to participate as well. And then and it's partly developing that storytelling, being able to explain why your company is a great place to work and letting your employees do that, much more believable. And other things I've do in this process is, don't go it alone. There's a lot of ample resources here at your fingertips, many here in this panel, available to help you with its hiring process, the onboarding, the training, with online training, with instructor-led training and educational resources. Many of this is free of charge because there's grants available, large amounts of state funding available for this. And so, but yeah, you're not alone in this, but you got to get out and collaborate. And it's going to take time to invest in this subject. I'm hoping I covered that. That was kind of my own summary. I don't know if there's any other tidbits in there that.
I just wanted to jump in. We talked about this earlier yesterday when we had a offline chat, but when we're talking about the investment in your people and in your training and in your culture and so forth, one of the stats I saw in Investopedia was, and this is just an $8 an hour job, the cost of the turnover that can be upwards of $3,500 per person. That's just an $8 an hour job. So what you're probably not really seeing behind the scenes is the time invested in someone who comes in the door who maybe isn't properly vetted before they get there, which is some of the things that groups like Fedge's group can do, and or your assessments and or the interviewing process of people coming in the door. And once they get in the door, what you're onboarding and when you're training and you're investing in that, and people look at that sometimes as, oh, training's expensive, or I don't want to, and there's funding available, so it's really not. But that cost of losing that person repeatedly in the revolving door of people coming in and out that you may not necessarily always see because there was time put into them, there was money put into them, could run upwards of far more than what it takes you to get that proper culture built, that proper training built, and keeping and retaining those people will actually come out to be far less than that turnover rate. So keep that in mind, because it's sometimes it's a blind cost. You're not looking at it in your face as much as you are the costs that you may see of what it takes to build that up. Yeah.
Very good. Well, folks, I want you please give this panel a hand and everything they put. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to throw in make a couple of comments and add some ideas out there. First, I want to thank Alan for the fantastic EDC for the fantastic lunch again, and thanks for PMA to give me a few minutes to kind of talk about this. Remember, I'm the DOL federal guy, so this is not a paid infomercial because I can't get paid for anything that I do, right? But I did want to share a couple ideas because I was thinking about you guys in the audience and thinking, I'm naturally a skeptic, in approach to most things. And so I was thinking, I can understand if you were sitting out in the audience and thinking, we're kind of a small organization or, a small company. We may not have the resources or maybe the flexibility that kind of Lance was talking about with his company. And I don't know, comparison to size, but just from your standpoint, if you're thinking that, or if you're thinking, hey, we're kind of out in a rural area, where we don't have direct access or easy access to all those kinds of resources. It's just, all that information you guys talked about was great information, sounds really good. But I don't think we can do that. You know, it's too much for us. We don't have the resources. We don't have the staffing. I don't have people that can manage and take on all this kind of, developing training programs and recruiting events and all that. And I just kind of wanted to talk to that and say, listen, if you're thinking that, you don't have to. You don't have to worry about that. Your focus ought to be on running your company as efficiently and effectively as possible, as successfully as possible, and growing that organization and being successful. But if any of those ideas that we talked about, if they did ring a bell to you and they say, yeah, that all makes sense, but I don't know how we could do it. You don't have to. All the folks that were on this panel up here, that's our job, is to do that for you and to do the paperwork for you and walk through the complexities and the challenges that you're going to face. You don't have to solve it all alone. So if it sounded good, but it's too good to be true, it's not. It really does work, and it can work. Lance even told you, he was surprised at how little they had to do as opposed to how much everyone else, the college, the workforce board, PMA as a industry association and advocate. So you don't have to do that. Partnership is the name of the game, and nothing of what we talked about, none of that ever happens without collaboration and partnership. So if any of it sounded good, please don't hesitate to get involved and to ask more about it. You don't have to do it alone. You won't have to go it alone, and you'll have an entire team of folks around you that will help make you successful. And the one key step you can do is be a part of PMA, because they know if you're thinking it and you're facing those challenges, then there's another organization in the region, in the area, in the metal manufacturing industry that's facing the same challenges, having the same thoughts that you are thinking. How do we solve this problem? And we're just one company. We just, with limited resources. So partnership is the name of the game. Please don't think that, and don't let that hold you back from taking advantage of this. And introduce Mr. Doug Johnson, who's the chairman of PMA.
Thank you, John. Again, David introduced me earlier. I'm the 2022 chairman of PMA, but I'm also the president and owner of a small contract manufacturing company in Cheshire, Connecticut. So for the manufacturers out there, I feel your pain. We've been fighting this battle for workforce development for a long time. And just to go off script for a minute, when I went to work for our company 12 years ago, 2 weeks in, the owner called me into his office. I was a VP of operations, a new position for them. And he said, "Hey, you've got a problem. You have 4 65-year-old tool makers and nobody below them that's in a training program. What are you going to do about it?" And of course, I said, "Well, what the hell have you been doing about it?" And he looked at me and said, "I'm one of your 65-year-old tool makers. It's not my problem. It's your problem." So, and that's how I got exposed to workforce development. It was, through a fire hose and getting to know our technical programs in Connecticut, which are very similar to what you have here. PMA was a big part of that and a catalyst for me joining PMA and eventually becoming the chairman was through that need to change. So we went from our average age was 59, it's 32 right now. So big shift. It took us 12 years to get there. So now we went from being in trouble with age to being one day the wild, wild west and the next day a daycare. So it's had its challenges. So I understand. And I just want to say one other thing. We're talking about, this brought back some memories for me. You're talking about your first job. My first job was, my mother owned a dog grooming company. So I got 50 cents a dog to wash and blow dry. It didn't matter if it was a toy poodle or a Siberian Husky. It was 50 cents. I had forgotten about that, but it was, one of those things that you just go, God, I know I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So thank you all for being here today. I hope you've enjoyed the tour. I built the first building we went through. I went, wow, this is incredible. I've toured a lot of facilities through my role at PMA and also in Connecticut. And I've never been in a facility this well put together and well thought out. I got to give Collin College a lot of credit and the Allen Economic Development for putting this all together today and putting together such a great facility here. The sky's the limit. You got everything you need. The only thing you're missing is tool and die and a machine shop for training the next generation of tool and die apprentices that I know a lot of people in the audience need. So well done. It's just absolutely incredible. Also, additionally, we're going to hear from our PMA team out of Washington who works to support us, in the lobbying efforts that are going on, federal funding and things that are going in Washington. Key part of our membership during the pandemic was a weekly call-in Washington and what they gave us for information on what was going on in DC and what moves we need to make as a small company. Do we do PPP and when do we do it? And, when are we going to see that funding? How do we pay it back? All of those things. And they were a key part of that. And, I've always looked back on that as a key element of membership to the PMA and how they helped us get through that. So our speaker today is going to be John Guzik. I've listened to John speak many times. I always walk away, sometimes shaking my head on some of the things that are happening in Washington. But it's also great to get that feedback because John is the founding partner of Franklin Partnership, which is a bipartisan Washington, D.C. based government relationship firm that represents PMA's interests before Congress and the administration. So it's bipartisan. The information we get is from both sides. So that's important for us. John's had nearly 30 years of time on Capitol Hill and campaign experience prior to the Franklin Partnership. He was the chief of staff for former Ways and Means Committee Chairman Dave Camp. He also served as the deputy executive director of the National Republican Congressional Committee, where he was the liaison with the House Republican leadership and was a top political strategist and fundraiser for the former House Policy Committee Chairman. So please help me welcome John.
Thanks, Douglas. Thank you all for inviting me, Lisa, Collin College, Allen EDC. I'm here from Washington. I'm here to help. Hold on to your wallets. I want to tell you a little story that happened last week. So Omar, my partner and I, my business partner, not that it matters, you travel around the country and speak to PMA districts. So last week I was in West Michigan, PMA speaking to them, staying in a Hampton Inn in suburb of Grand Rapids. Now, how many of you have ever experienced an energy efficient hotel room? I hadn't. It's first time. So when the front desk lady gives me my key, she says, all you have to do is swipe your key next to the light switch and your lights will turn on. Oh, that's cool. So I get into my room, swipe the key, lights don't turn on. Fortunately, housekeeping is still on the floor. She comes by, no, you don't swipe, you got to stick it in. And I said, oh, okay. So I stick it in, my lights all turn on. Turn the TV on. I'm like changing, getting undressed. And some of you know that I'm visually impaired. I'm blind as a bat. And so, if you got to remember where you put things when you have a visual impairment. And so I said to myself, okay, TV's on, lights are on, everything's perfect. I got to put the key in my wallet so I know where it is tomorrow morning. So I put the key in my wallet, continue watching television. 5 minutes later, the room goes black. So you got a blind guy in his underwear crawling around the floor of his hotel room with no lights on, stumbling over everything. I finally found the wallet, put the key in the socket. Needless to say, that night, I slept with all the lights on. The TV was blaring. I sort of defeated the purpose of an energy efficient hotel room. So, anyhow, I want to talk briefly about the elections. I'm going to talk about what impact that is going to have on workforce programs that we've been talking about. And then I'm going to talk about some of the services that we provide the PMA membership. And Dave and Doug, I think I want to change my title. I'm no longer a lobbyist. I want to be called a government relations engineer. I think, since it represents so many manufacturing. So let's talk about the elections. It took a month. So one thing you guys do in as engineers and in the workforce, you know how to add. Well, election officials don't. It took a month for them to resolve an election in Fresno, Central Valley, California. So we now know who controls the House of Representatives. It took a month. The Republican won by over 700 votes. So now it looks like there's going to be 222 Republicans in the House of Representatives. 213. Democrats have 213 seats. Unfortunately, a Democrat member from Richmond, Virginia, lost his battle with cancer last week. So now the Democrat number is 2012, but that is a strong Democrat seat. And once the governor holds a special election, the Democrats number will boost back up to 13. That is roughly a five-seat majority for House Republicans moving into the next Congress, a pickup of a net 9 seats. Last night changed the dynamics in the United States Senate. Senator Warnock won his special election, the runoff with Herschel Walker. So Democrats now control the Senate 51-49. What that means is Kamala Harris no longer has to stay in Washington to cast the tie-breaking vote. The committee assignments are divvied up differently. When it was 50-50, there was half of the committees were Republicans, half were Democrats. And so it was harder to move legislation. So Democrats will have a seat or two advantage at the committee level, which will make it easier for them to move nominations and bring legislation to the floor of the United States Senate. Looking at this past election, and specifically in Texas, here's a list of top Republican counties in Texas and top Democrat counties in Texas. I mean, look at some of these top Republican counties. Did the Pope get 96% of the vote? Governor Abbott got 97% of the vote in some of these small counties. The problem is when you look at this, those smaller counties have 100 votes, 1,000 votes. But when you look at this, the largest Democrat counties, they're Dallas County, they're county around Houston. And so it is impacting the political dynamics in the state of Texas. In the U.S. House of Representatives, Republicans won 25 of the 38 House seats in Texas. 1 seat flipped, which is Texas 16. You've got a new member there, and then Allen has a new representative, Keith Self. So if he hasn't toured Collin College or your facilities in this area, I encourage you to let us know. We are more than happy to set up a plant tour for him to tour your specific facility. The president's party, on average, loses 28 House seats, 4 Senate seats in the first midterm election. This year, with President Biden's popularity so low at 45%, 55%, 44% approved, 55% disapproved, many would thought this would be a big year. But exit polls showed that the voters wanted a split government. They wanted one party to control one chamber, the other party to control another chamber. We also learned from exit polls that Republicans won on some critical issues like crime, foreign policy, immigration, and the economy. And even though the president is so unpopular, Republicans won the popular vote for the first time in many, many years. And so you would have thought in this political environment that Republicans would have picked up 20, 30 seats. And many political prognosticators were expecting the Republicans have pick up that large number of seats. And they called it a wave. It didn't turn out to be a wave. It turned out to be a ripple. So why does this happen? Republicans won on the issues. They won the popular vote. Why did Republicans only pick up, 9 seats or a net gain of 5 seats in the House of Representatives? Well, you need to look back at the last 2 weeks of the election. Independents typically vote against the president's party in midterm elections. And we saw that leading up to the election, independents were voting Republican by 15%, 15 percentage points. And then what happened in the last 2 weeks of the election? You had Donald Trump start doing rallies around the country for the candidates that he supported. Then he leaked out his secret that he's running for re-election. And you saw many of those independents who were leaning Republican ended up voting, depending on what survey you look at, 1 to 6% for a Republican. I just saw one recently. Final score was independents went 2 points towards the Republicans, which is a real reason why the Republicans didn't do as well. I think those independents said they saw Trump going out there on the campaign trail and announcing that he's going to run for re-election. So it's been there, done that. I'm not doing that. I'm voting Democrat. I think that's what happened. That's why the election turned out, so different than what many expected. This election was supposed to have been a referendum on Joe Biden. And in the end, it turned out to be a referendum on Donald Trump. And that's not typically what happens in off-year elections. We also saw a lot of ticket splitting. Nevada elected a Republican governor, yet they re-elected their Democrat senator. Governor Sununu in New Hampshire won by like 12 points, but the Republican candidate for the United States Senate got clobbered. Ohio, Governor DeWine won, I think, by 8 points, and he just barely dragged J.D. Vance, over the finish line. And so the ticket splitting and the independent shifting did have a significant impact in the election. So now that Walker has lost or Warnock has won, I mentioned that there's going to be opportunities for Democrats to bring more nominations to the floor. I really don't think with only a 2-seat majority or 1-seat majority that there's going to be opportunities for large legislative vehicles like we saw in the last 2 years, where Democrats control the House, Senate, and the White House. I think you're going to look at House Republicans who are going to do a lot of investigations into the administration, whether it's Hunter Biden or whatever. So I think there's going to be small incremental steps. There's a saying in Washington, if you can't legislate it, regulate it. I think this administration is, as they're not going to be able to have a robust legislative agenda, but they will beef up their regulatory oversight in America. So, and I do think factions in the House and the Senate, whether it's the conservatives or the independent conservatives and moderates, will play a larger and larger role. And also Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, two senators from West Virginia and Arizona, moderate Democrats, they basically determined what legislation went to the Senate floor and what didn't. And because they needed their votes, with 51 votes, they don't need both of them. They only need to bring one of them along the way. So that will have an impact on the legislative agenda. But with regard to manufacturing remains a bipartisan issue. Both parties are rushing to support manufacturers. Career and technical education has broad bipartisan support in the Congress. And so we will see that continue. Regardless of who controls the Congress, funding for workforce and job training programs will continue to increase regardless of who's in control. If there is a difference, when you look at job training and workforce programs, Democrats typically support programs that are supported by the unions, where Republicans generally, I'm not drawing strict lines, just broad brushstrokes, Republicans generally support programs that are supported by the employers. But both Democrats and Republicans support public-private partnerships that John just talked about, the partnerships that business, industry, education, parents need to be working together to further educate the workforce. Government wants to help create job training programs. And unlike maybe 30, 40 years ago, which is before my time, where good ideas only came out of Washington, the focus and the priority, and I think John Federer would agree, that the programs that are incubated locally will have the priority at the Department of Labor and throughout government moving forward. A stable workforce encourages employment and employers to move in. And the great work that community colleges like Collin Community College Technical School is doing is not only attracting students, but it's also attracting additional businesses. Hence why all of you are in this room today as well. So let's talk about one of the larger pieces of legislation that the Congress passed last year, and that's the CHIPS and Science Bill. The semiconductor chip industry, it started as a bill to go after China, but in the end, it came into a bill to support the domestic production to support the domestic semiconductor chip industry. Provided $52 billion to incentivize chip development in the United States. There's a groundbreaking in Columbus, Ohio. The president was just in Phoenix this week talking about, and he was in Bay City, Michigan earlier talking about the chip industry. In this legislation, creates a supply chain database so that if there is a hiccup in the economy, we don't have the supply chain challenges that many of you encountered during COVID. They're increasing the amount of manufacturing institutes that would be allowed as part of this legislation. They tripled the amount of money used for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the MEP program. They provide $10 billion for regional technical hubs and $11 billion for R&D and workforce development programs. So, while Washington is a very partisan city, if you care about workforce and job training, there's some good stuff. There's some good stuff in this very large piece of legislation. And in the end, it passed on a bipartisan basis. Of course, there are a lot more Democrats and Republicans who voted for it. But as we pull back the curtain and look at some of the details that the administration is rolling out, there are some very positive things for the workforce in this legislation. Then there's also national labs. There's a $25 million a year grant program for small businesses. It's a small business voucher program that if you've got a concept that will allow you to research, development, do a demonstration project, technology transfers. So this money is available if you have a concept to advance the technology used in your facility or in the semiconductor chip industry. Similarly, there's a grant program to make it make programs more commercially viable, utilizing our national labs like at Oak Ridge in Tennessee and the facility in Idaho. Speaking faster than I can turn my pages. Then on funding that I talked about, the Perkins Loan Program, the president suggested $25 million. The House upped it to $45 million. The Senate bumped it to $60 million. So those of you who take advantage of the Perkins Loan Program, that money is increasing. Look at apprenticeships. The Biden administration and the House increased apprenticeship funding by 29%. The Senate increased it by 27%. So while they're negotiating the details, in the end, it'll probably be around 28% increase for the apprenticeship programs. The MEP program, the president suggested $275 million. I remember back in the day, during the Bush administration, where we were lobbying for $85 million for the MEP program. Today, the administration, is recommending 275. The House passed it at 212. The Senate is looking at 200 million. So again, many of these programs that are critically important to manufacturers, the funding is going to go up, and it's regardless of who's in control. So, and most importantly, there's 100% increase in the Strategic Community College Training Grant Program. So that's the House passed 100% increase in that program. So let's look at the delegation we have here in Texas, because there are some critical players that play a role in the education process in Washington. We've got Senator Cornyn, who sits on the Community College Caucus. He routinely supports CTE and Career Technical Education Programs, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. You've got Senator Cruz, who has introduced legislation that would create a tax credit if you donate to a nonprofit that works to expand career technical education programs. You've got in the House, you've got 4 members who serve on the Career Technical Education Caucus. Congressman Joaquin Castro serves on the all-important Education and Labor Committee. So you do have some workhorses in the state of Texas who advocate on behalf of who understand these workforce programs, and you should utilize those relationships. If you don't have a relationship, invite Senator Cornyn to your facility, contact us, and we will reach out to them, encourage him to tour, or your local senator or member of Congress. Elections have consequences, and I touched on it. I don't think we're going to see large major pieces of legislation passing. I think it's going to be smaller. I think there's going to be a lot of oversight moving forward, but know that when it comes to workforce and job training programs and funding coming out of Washington, that you should feel secure. But know that individual companies, those who are looking for a handout from the federal government, aren't going to get it. The government is going to be looking to see if you can create a public-private partnership. So that's where the funding will go. And now I want to pivot, because that's part of the lobbying, the government relations. That's the engineering side of my job. The other side of our job is advocacy, and advocacy routinely ranks as one of the top the top services that PMA provides its members from their membership surveys. What do we do? There's the one voice thing. What do? We do a monthly flyer that we send out to the districts. So for the next meeting, Lisa or somebody on the executive team here in North Texas could, what happened last month in Congress, what's going to happen this coming month in Congress, and if there's any action items that's out there. And so that's something that we provide. We provide individual consultation for our PMA members. Whether you have a problem or a question about a government form or government regulation. For example, OSHA has made several changes to the injury illness prevention program, how you have to file your 300 and 300As. We've taken a lot of questions from individual members on what those changes mean and what do they need to do. They have made changes on who has to file electronically and who doesn't have to file electronically. We provide advice and guidance to individual members on tax issues. For example, 4 or 5 years ago, we were strong advocates for lobbying to get 100% deductibility of bonus depreciation, and we were successful. Well, bonus depreciation starting January 1 goes from full deductibility for the purchase of a piece of equipment to 90%. So it does have an impact on your business. So if you're looking at buying a piece of equipment, you should probably consider doing that before the end of the calendar year. The R&D tax credit. 60% of PMA members utilize the R&D tax credit. Tax credit for immediate expensing expired. And so now you have to amortize it over 5 years. We are working with the leaders in the House and the Senate, hopefully in this year-end package, to revert back to immediate expensing of the R&D tax credit. Doug talked about during COVID, we were strong supporters of the creation of the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP program, but we quickly realized that the PPP program didn't take care of all of the needs of the employers, specifically PMA members. And so we worked with Congress to develop an enhanced employer retention tax credit. So that is these are some of the things that we are involved with on behalf of individual members, but also on behalf of the entire membership. Whether it's U.S. or foreign environmental regulations, whether it's dealing with how you're going to deal with conflict minerals and all, we give individual advice. And then there's several one-off issues. There's a lot of talk in Washington about Buy American and Made in America, and what that means. We just helped a member in Michigan just this week on that. We have a member in Ohio who has an employee who comes from Central Africa. And he says, well, I got my family. Can you help me bring my family in to work in your shop? So we put him in touch with a member of Congress and senator. And that work is in the process. We help members deal with the tariffs and tariff rate quotas. Steel aluminum tariffs are a big concern to PMA members with the rising costs of steel and aluminum. Over the course of our weekly calls and our monthly webinars, we've been reminding members to look at the Customs and Border Patrol website, because every Monday it lists what is the status of imports of every product based on HTS codes of steel and aluminum. Well, we had a member, actually, we had a manufacturer whose customs agent wasn't looking at that form. So this customs agent was charging this manufacturer the duties all year for aluminum that was being shipped in from Europe. Well, if the customs agent looked at the duty form, they would have realized that aluminum coming into this country never hit the quota, but the manufacturer is still paying the quota up to $250,000 this year. So the manufacturers reached out to us, says, hey, can I get this money back? I could use this, for training and equipment and stuff. And so we're in the process. So these are some of the issues that we do far, over and above what we do for direct lobbying on your behalf. So with that, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have. Remember, I'm from Washington. Hold on.